Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today, Driving Digital Transformation Insights with Value Stream Management. Our presenters today are Christopher Condo and Dr. Mik Kersten. Chris serves application development and delivery professionals as a principal analyst at Forrester. He is a part of Forrester's AD&D coverage of DevOps toolchains, focusing on CI/CD, as well as software development strategies for enabling those strategies. Dr. Mik Kersten is the best-selling author of Project to Product, How to Survive and Thrive in the Age of Digital Disruption with the Flow Framework, and founder and CEO of Tasktop. Mik's experiences working with some of the largest digital transformations in the world have led him to identify the critical gap between business leaders and technologists, resulting in his creation of the Flow Framework to connect strategy to delivery.
Thank you very much. So recently, just jumping right into it, thanks very much, Tasktop, for inviting me. Just want to talk about the fact that we recently conducted an industry wave on value stream management tools. That wave signifies a couple of things in my mind anyways, as an analyst. First of all, the market's big enough to support 11 pretty good sized players in this space with really interesting and compelling capabilities that serve a value stream management market to provide visibility, mapping capabilities, common data models, analytics, metrics, all sorts of things that are necessary to actually properly manage, your value stream, really, right? The whole idea of value stream management is to look at your software delivery pipeline as a value stream so that you can start to think about not only, how well is that value stream optimized from a performance perspective as far as process performance, but is it actually delivering value to your business? And so I'm really glad Tasktop invited me to be part of this webinar and looking forward to explore more of this topic with you today.
Yeah, and I just want to say it's been great to see both the category maturity, especially Forrester's leadership in it. It was, I think, 2.5 years ago where I was doing the research for Project to Product, and we had all this data from customers on their value streams. And of course, from that data, it was 308 different customers whose data contributed to the Flow framework and to some of the conclusions and aspects of the Flow framework and Project to Product. And of course, the key thing that I realized in looking at that data is that there's something beyond Agile and DevOps that is where information flows, where business value is defined, delivered, and managed, or the problem being most of the time it's the value streams managing you, not you managing your value streams. And I came across the work of Chris Condo and Diego as well, and actually embedded their quote, defining value stream management into Project to Product, into the book, because I realized, the work that they were doing was really important. It was finally elevating what the industry understood with Agile and DevOps, but what large organizations were dealing with, which is that something need to connect those practices to the business and to really allow those technical practices we've learned over the last 2 decades to be managed end to end, and to be basically to be the thing guiding the transformation rather than specific portions of the value stream, such as deploying Agile being the only thing that you see as you better understand whether you're improving or you're not, whether the problem's somewhere else, upstream or downstream of there. So it's been great to see this. It's been great to see the category and all the vendors mature. And with that, we'll give you, I think Chris and I will now give you our take on it. I'll of course give you a summary of how Tasktop sees this and what we've learned through our customers, what we've been able to address. But we'll start with just a couple stories here. So go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, sure. So maybe you might not be familiar with what analysts do, but at Forrester, what we do is we write about compelling topics in the software delivery space. And when I started as an analyst in 2016 and into 2017, just before we started our research on value stream management, we started getting a lot of really interesting inquiries. And so this story is basically a pretty typical story, as you might understand where it's going because of the recent situation with the pandemic. But until recently, this was really typical, like this scene on the left-hand side, right? Everybody getting together. Forrester actually has a lot of research on building developer spaces, creating common spaces for teamwork where people can be together, they can get their work done. And in fact, that became a very cozy relationship, right? And on the slide on the right, your manager could walk right up to you and say, how's it going? What's happening? How's the schedule? How are we doing on our deliverables? Or maybe this is another scenario where you're an engineer and you're talking to a product owner and you're saying, I really want to understand the business logic. I want to understand what's going on. And so it was great, right? Everything was going well. Next slide. where life was great, everybody was doing really wonderful. But then, what we started getting, even though everything seemed great, we started getting a lot of inquiries from customers. And this is even before the pandemic. Like, I have all these DevOps tools, but I don't feel like I have visibility. I have all these DevOps tools, but I really am no better off at predicting when my end date's going to be. The estimation is still, very rudimentary, and I don't have real metrics on what's going on in my on my development team or my whole software delivery lifecycle. And so before we go much further, we're going to ask a few questions. Poll question number 1 is your organization able to connect software development and delivery efforts with value delivered to the business or customers? And so please select one. It's a pretty simple poll, yes or no. Either you have this system for connecting all the outcomes back with your software delivery effort, or you really don't. So that's our poll number 1. And then we have another poll question, I believe. Question number 2, does your organization have an automated system to capture software delivery metrics from idea to production? Yes, no, or you don't know. And sorry about these quick changes. We need to make sure that the poll is actually executed using our platform. And so these 2 questions are really designed, and they really sort of capture, I would say, the sentiment of what I was picking up back before we started writing about value stream management, was that, these teams were struggling. They didn't have data on their software delivery pipeline. They had individual pockets of data from each individual tool, but it wasn't connected together. They didn't really have a good picture of what the end-to-end cycle time was, or any of those kind of basic metrics. And not only that, they didn't really have any way of measuring value delivered. And so let's progress further if we have time.
Yeah,
I'll let Mik take it from here. Yeah.
I had a similar realization, and Chris just showed you that story of how much effort we've put into, how much effort so many organizations put into their office spaces, right? I've seen a big spectrum of these, but a lot of organizations have realized that the better you can walk around, the better that you can see some information radiators or engage with teams directly and be asking them how work is going, the more you're able to see the work of software delivery. So there's, in manufacturing, this concept of going to Gemba. And this really came from Taichi Ono, who realized that executives specifically needed to see where work was happening and how it was happening, to have a sense of how things should improve. If you didn't have that kind of sense of a ground truth as an executive, you could make some very bad decisions in terms of how you might change staffing, how you might invest in different initiatives, what suppliers you might use to do those sorts of things. So it became a very important practice as manufacturing matured to go to Gemba, to go and see how work is done, and to really see where the waste is, and to engage in the process of continuous improvement around that. But of course, with cars, this is very simple. So here's a picture of the BMW Leipzig plant that I summarized in Project the Product, and this is exactly what I saw there. And you actually did have executives and leaders and managers looking at how production happened, learning from it very viscerally, and then engaging it with teams and with other leaders to figure out how to improve the manufacturing processes, improve the working environment for people, and so on. So the problem with software is that software is not tangible. You don't see it lifted up on a crane over here. We're actually working with intangibles. So the question becomes, how do we go to Gemba for intangibles? How do we do that in the scenario, as Chris pointed out, where there's not even an office to go to? So I actually think in a lot of what I saw around the offices, it was not even properly going to Gemba, because you were just getting these anecdotes. So what is Gemba for intangibles? How do we see the work that is done? And it's interesting with the perspective of a developer, because as a developer, at least my personal experience was that the code did not feel that intangible. It was something I was working with every single day, right? It felt to me almost as tangible as Lego building blocks did when I was a kid. I was always building it, changing it, refactoring it, testing it, and so on. It actually felt quite tangible in my mind. But I realized then that people who have not had that direct experience, of course, for them, that software does feel very amorphous, and they start looking at these different ways of measuring value that to a developer might seem odd. Like if you're only looking at how many times you deploy code per day, well, as a developer, that didn't seem like value to me. That just seemed like a piece of pipeline automation I thought was I thought was critical when I first had a chance to implement in 1999, right, is the continuous deployment. So it felt nothing like value. And Gemba is about understanding value and waste. So what is Gemba for these intangibles? Is it code? Is it walking around doing those meetings? Is it exporting data from your Jira or your Azure DevOps or your GitHub and understanding how many story points were closed? And I think the answer to all of these is no, it's not that. And we've basically, we use the wrong tools to try to go to Gemba, but only by walking around, only by creating these developer workspaces. And we haven't actually looked at the way that value flows from the point of a value stream, from the point of what the developer is actually building, what other specialists like UX designers or your SREs are continually working on to produce value to the customers. So I think we've had the wrong set of abstractions because we've tried to look too high level, just at org charts as representing value, and they don't. They're just one slice. It's an organizational view. It's not a flow view. Or we've looked too low at how many deploys happen per day, how many code commits there are, how many story points are closed. And those themselves don't represent value. And I think the key thing about this emerging discipline of value stream management is it does provide you with the right set of abstractions to actually go to Gemba, to understand where waste is, where work is piling up, where you need to help support your teams and your value streams. And so that's really our goal here, is to share some of our perspectives on it with you. And then I'll actually show you some flow diagnostic stories that really are these Gemba walks that I've done with executives to help their value streams and their product portfolios improve.
So one of the things that the clients have been calling me up for back when everything was great and they were all together is they said, I don't have any data. I've been reading about all this research about from Dora or from, whatever else is going on in the DevOps, marketplace. And it seems like everybody is able to get data, but me. I want to know how am I tracking against my deliverables? How am I tracking against my schedule? Am I delivering any value? Am I going to hit my schedule? And what it turns out is that this pandemic's made things worse, because in the past, as we saw before, people would meet at tables, managers could walk up to their employees and ask them what's going on. But there was a lot of reliance, not on data, but on body language, on people's answers. So a lot of opinionation, a lot of body language, and a lot of what I would say managerial gut instincts. And then the only way to actually pull all this data together was to really have like a genius product owner who was willing to walk around all the cubes, ask everybody what they're doing, understand what the deliverables were, understand what the whole marketing alignment was, and really draw this out on paper. It would be a point in time where they would say, I think I understand, I think I know where we are, I have a good feeling, let's add 4 weeks to the schedule and I think we'll be okay, or I think we're hitting the customer's value where we want them to. It was really, it relied on, like I said, gut instincts, it relied on talent. And if you didn't have a person with those gut instincts or that talent, or your team was so complicated that it wasn't really possible because you had too many streams going on at the same time, these graphs really do nothing. They just give you sort of like a warm, fuzzy feeling that really has no basis of reality. So what do we see? This manual, when people do actually track data, this is what we find out. And next slide, please. They thought they were improving, but it turns out they haven't been improving over the last 5 years, right? We've done things we've done research through our survey and ask teams like, how often do you release software? And even though teams often tell us their goals are to release more frequently, to have more smaller updates, to really deliver value with greater frequency, it turns out that over the last 5 years, they haven't gone any faster. The top line here, that's the high point of this whole chart, is we average 1 release per quarter. Now that's not bad for some businesses, but for most businesses, it's not any good at all. If you can't release on a daily basis, get a patch out the door, if you can't be automated some way, if you can't actually understand, and for most teams, I should add, this is probably a best guess. They probably don't actually know how often they're releasing, but this is their best guess. And this is based on thousands of respondents from our survey. So things aren't really getting any better. And what we're hearing in the next slide is that teams really need more data to improve, right? You can't do continuous improvement. You can't be successful at digital transformation if you don't have some way of tying that transformation and customer experience to your need to improve. And I'm going to tell you a little story. I mean, Mik was talking about being a developer. In my past experience, I was development lead on Microsoft development team. And one day our manager said, hey, we're going to start having all the development leads show up to the business review meeting. And he wanted any possible piece of data we could give him, whether it was build time, whether it was the number of exceptions that were happening in the log files, whether it was things happening on the live site. And we all thought, like, this seems kind of crazy. Why do we want to be part of a business review? It turned out that collecting all that data and actually drawing a picture of every single team involved in this product's level of delivery capability was actually critical to understanding, were we on the right track or not? And it really struck home to me that without that data, even though it was manually gathered on a monthly basis, we had no way of actually knowing if we were getting better or not. And so when you have those kinds of issues where, like, I'm tracking my metrics, the product team's tracking their metrics, you can get into a real tug of war, as we see on this next slide, where I'm thinking about things like, story points completed or test coverage or escape defects and cycle time. And the product management team's really thinking about something completely different, right? Where they're thinking about customer experience or the revenue or the market share. And in the middle of this, you have this like real tension, right? Like, I need to optimize my process because I'm the development manager. Leave me alone, product team. You go figure out your own problems. Where the product team is like, what's the point of having a development team if you're not going to actually worry about customer experience, or you're not going to think about value delivered? And the problem is that these two teams live in separate silos. They're graded on their performance review with completely different measurements. And so it really just creates this situation for a disaster where they're not connected together, and the products that they're trying to create are the things that suffer the most.
Yeah, I think what's so interesting is that, we see varying degrees of maturity on these metrics, and these are important metrics, right? The cycle time in development is an important metric. Story points, our teams at TaskTop certainly use those because they're very important for estimation and prioritization. But the problem is that these are metrics that are particular to these disciplines. How many times you release a day is a very important metric to your operations support team and support teams, but as well as these metrics such as customer NPS, right? But these are not value stream metrics. And I think that's one of the big mistakes that we're seeing, is that organizations are putting these metrics in place and they're then using these metrics to drive decision making. So I think, as Chris showed that very concerning chart, that even in the good times, the pre-pandemic times, all of this investment was going into deploying measurement for these things like the DORA metrics, but the improvements are not there. And I think this slide illustrates it perfectly. You've got two different sets of measures. They're both very detailed, and they do nothing to connect the customer to delivery, to understand whether you're actually delivering more value to the customer or less, whether NPS is going up because of all your automation efforts or because of all your efforts to scale your agile teams. Are customers actually happier? Are you building the right things and so on? None of that is visible from this. And so without the right set of metrics to really go to Gemba to understand if you're producing more waste or you're actually producing more value, of course, we end up with exactly the scenario that Chris showed us, which is improvements not happening in spite of massive investment in trying to improve in the transformation. And I think, yeah, Chris, that was a great story that you told, because I've had a similar feeling, and I've seen this happen when you start bringing the business and the technology and the product side together and start getting them to think on what that common set of metrics is. You really start going into the right direction. So what we're seeing, though, is that too often the Agile and DevOps transformations are just too narrow, right? As I think you've put into your report, this is about going beyond Agile and DevOps into ways of measuring the value stream and into ways of measuring value delivery that's customer-centric and that's business-centric, but intimately connected to the technology practice that are needed to deliver great value. So the challenge that we're seeing is most organizations simply don't know whether they've actually delivered a meaningful return. They've got great ways of measuring cost, and that's how much they're investing in contracting and full-time staff, in tooling and so on, but there isn't a measure of value that's agreed upon. There isn't a set of metrics you should, as a product leader. I think that was a great story, Chris. That sometimes you'll have that great product owner, you'll put him in front of your leadership, right? Because he knows exactly, or she knows exactly how you're tracking to that release. And so you have to put them in front of leadership. But it's amazing to me, both in terms of, when I often ask this question now, what metrics, this is for large enterprise organizations, what metrics are you putting in front of your CEO? What metrics would you put in front of your board? And the challenge is, because at that point is, you're actually showing measurement of how you're tracking, on your entire IT spend, on your entire digital capability. And too often there isn't something that you're proud to show, because you can't trust the data, let's say, because the data is too specific. It seems like the metrics are, again, too deep down in one side, is, you know, how many story points we've closed, what's our cycle time. Those aren't metrics that the business really speaks. So there's this lack of ways of measuring value, lack of really measuring value streams, and how investments and improvement are actually turning into business results, which in the end, everyone wants to see. So of course, to get there, we need to reduce this mismatch between the business and IT and actually get them to focus on one set of value stream metrics, right? Not to say the problems on your end, you know, requirements keep changing, or the problems on your end, you guys are too slow. We keep dumping everything that you need to build over the fence really nicely, and then you're just too slow to implement it. Your backlogs are not being taken down fast enough. You need to actually get the same scorecard, and that's the amazing thing about the value stream metrics, is they are your scorecard for business and IT together, so that you're looking at removing bottlenecks that span both, rather than having one silo blame the other. And of course, the whole goal here is to become much more responsive, to become much more agile at a business level, because you're actually able to pivot more quickly, to change investment, to ramp up where you're seeing success, or to rebalance where you're not. So to me, fundamentally, this is really about how do we measure value. And if we can just come up with a consistent way of defining value and then implementing value streams to be measured, we would be in a much better place in terms of some of those survey answers that you're seeing, Chris.
Yep.
So why don't you tell us again, the kernel, the thing that one of the few quotes I did embed in project to product is this one. Why don't you take us through this?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, Diego Lajudige is my colleague here at Forrester, and I give a lot of credit to him for really writing up this very concise definition of what we at Forrester call value stream management. So it's a combination of people, process, and technology. We figure it has to have those three elements in order to actually help software engineering companies deliver all on their promises of you know, delivering value to customers. It requires people to understand what they're doing and how they can improve. It involves measuring the processes, and it incorporates the technology that you're using to create that software, because it's such a critical piece. This value stream management capability or methodology needs to map, it needs to optimize, visualize, measure, and govern business value flow, including epic stories and work items, through a heterogeneous enterprise software delivery pipelines, right? The idea that you know, every team has a collection of tools. Every team has this notion of working in an agile way with epic stories and work items. The idea that you should be able to map your process, you should be able to use this application or solution to optimize the flow through those series of applications or process steps. The idea that you can visualize and measure at various increments what's going on inside your value stream, and that it should measure all these different levels of granularity if possible, and that it does it in a heterogeneous enterprise software delivery pipeline. And then VSM tools, but to summarize it, are just the technology enabling the practice of VSM, right? A VSM solution enables you to actually manage your value stream management system. It's not required. You can manage your value stream on your own if you want to. You can, you know, certainly create your own solution using a bunch of off-the-shelf components, but you know, based on the wave that we just conducted, it's not easy. But I'm sure certain companies have elements of that. And so value stream management is really about taking a look at almost like a holistic view of your whole entire software delivery process and pipeline, and trying to encapsulate it into you know, meaningful measurements and meaningful output, so that your team can be focused on delivering value, so that you're not constantly just chipping away at an endless pile of work items in your backlog. They actually have meaning, they actually have priority, they actually, you can look at every one of those and understand how they relate back to the current initiatives that your business is trying to execute on. And more importantly, I think that everybody who's on your software delivery team, whether it's a product planner or a product owner or a developer or someone in QA or a security person or an operational person, they all understand that what these work items relate to how they relate to delivering value to the customers. That's what we hope that value stream management really provides, is just this, this ability to unify the team around delivering value to the customer.
Yeah, and I'll go as far as saying, Chris, that this is every large company that I've seen successful with digital and being able to manage and have this feedback loop between the customer decision-making strategy and delivery has value stream management in place today, right? The tech giants, they've built it all themselves. Like, they've got it all in-house. They've made massive investments with dozens, in some cases hundreds of staff to basically establish their value stream tooling in-house. Some of them sell portions of that, right? You can buy portions of Amazon's or Microsoft's value stream tooling. Google tends to keep theirs in-house. Tech unicorns, so kind of the next size down, they tend to have simpler product portfolios, but they've done the same thing. They've got end-to-end connected value streams across these heterogeneous tool chains. And again, they've just invested very heavily in this. And the challenge that we're seeing is for enterprise organizations to all of a sudden put 30 or 40 or 100 people on implementing your value stream management solution that spans the, let's be honest, mess of heterogeneous tools that you have, because there's still need for consolidation for many organizations. And that's just because of legacy, right? That's just because of the pace of change of Agile and DevOps tool chains, as well as, upstream and downstream tool chains, be they project management tools or service management tools and such. So I think the key thing about, this definition, I like it because it's concrete. It's actually telling you what this tool needs to be like. It actually is about that flow of work and the work items. That is what defines the flow of value across these tools. That is the thing that's common across those tools. And that's what we realized, by the way, with Tasktop Hub. The reason that we've been able to, with our integration product, federate all those tools is because each one of those tools, all the way across the entire value stream, regardless of what role you're in, all the way down to the service desk or to an ideation tool or a business strategy or OKR tool, everything it fundamentally is around these work items. And we learn that because that's what we synchronize across value streams. They'll have different flows and different shapes, but fundamentally, they all define work. So I think the key point being is that having a value stream solution implemented, be it created by yourself or be it something that you buy off the shelf, as you'll see some of here and as the way defined, is critical to success. It's no longer optional.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit. We have a lot of slides to get through. So basically, this is what your value stream, this is your traditional value stream map. And what a value stream management tool allows you to do is map all these steps. And instead of doing it maybe on a whiteboard or with sticky notes, you're doing it in software. And the other great thing that the value stream management tool does is instead of you having to go in and figure out, the time spent working on an item versus the time spent idle, and then the handoff time, the value stream management tool can actually measure that for you. It can measure the deltas between each step, and it can actually roll up all the times across all these steps. And then at the end of the day, if you look at the two endpoints, there's a business piece that says, hey, I have an investment in this particular value stream. And on the other endpoint, there's an outcome that says, how did I measure whether or not I succeeded at that particular objective? So this is the real key that a lot of people are missing, is that they don't have the process metrics and they don't have that end-to-end tie back to say, did I actually achieve what I set out to do? What many customers tell us is that simply going through this process makes them think about, why are we creating these features? Why do we have this value stream? And what is it that we want to do? Questions that they never even bothered asking before. They just threw things in the backlog and started working on them. Next. And so this is our conceptual view of what a value stream management solution can do. And to kind of refer to what Mik was saying, is that there are certainly companies that have created this internally, but it's not easy, right? We're talking about a dashboard that gives you visualization across your software delivery pipeline. It can give you metrics, it gives you alerts, it allows you to apply governance, it allows you to do analytics, and it takes that data across all those different process steps and boils it down into, here's how long it's taken you to work this particular value stream. Here's how much wait time there was. Here's how much process time there was. These are the resources that are working on. These are the greatest number of types of issues that you're working on, whether it's new issues, whether it's bugs. This is how many times this bug went through the system. Underneath this thing that kind of maps up to your logical value stream is a common data model. and an integration component that allows you to take this software, integrate it to all your software delivery tools, collect all that data. It doesn't become a duplicate of those data sources. It's not a duplicate of your source code system. It's not a duplicate of your planning tool or your CI/CD tool. It's basically capturing the metadata, the process data that comes from those things that represents that artifact going from idea, changing into a work item, changing into code, changing into testable code, changing into a binary artifact, going out the door, and then measuring whether or not it delivered value. That's not easy to do. Big companies can do it. You know, the unicorns can do it. Most average companies would say, I'd like this capability, but I don't want to spend my life doing it. So that's basically a value stream management solution in a nutshell.
Yeah, and a couple of things I want to highlight here, because I think this is a great visual of it. So a pitfall I often see is that, okay, we'll just get it out of our Agile tool, right? Let's just get this data out of Jira and Jenkins. And the problem is, if you do that, you've not actually created these separate panes. And these panes are important because software delivery is more complex. It's actually, in many cases, be more complex than the manufacturing line, right? Especially when you have different Agile teams working in different ways. If they're not contributing and to a common model of the value stream, if they've just been doing the work that the way they like to work, you're not getting that right data onto the control plane. And so we've realized that just extracting the data without actually getting the teams engaged in value stream management can be very problematic and extremely misleading in terms of the data that you're seeing. So the interesting thing here that we're seeing is that there's, you know, and I've talked to countless at this point, you know, probably, well, not countless, but because I can count to 24, but I could call about 24 executives, kind of CXO level executives who've been part of a major value stream mapping exercise for their organizations. And for me, sort of the genius of value stream mapping was when Carmen Diardo, actually, one of our staff, he was still at Nationwide Insurance back then. He handed me this book. Nationwide Insurance has this, you know, this great lean history. This book is kind of hard to come by, and it's by Mike Rother. It's called Learning to See. It really defined value stream mapping. But what's amazing to me is that in terms of services that companies are applying, they're doing what Chris said, basically posted PowerPoint and whiteboard value stream maps of some of the most complex IT portfolios you can imagine, and it just can't work, right? It's a great idea to do it, but if car manufacturers stopped at using leather-sized piece or A3-sized pieces of paper to do value stream maps, they would have never got to the place where they are, and we would still have cars that go 30 miles and then stop working. So the value stream mapping itself and doing it on a whiteboard is not a flawed idea. Trying to manage your transformation with that is completely broken. It's grossly insufficient. What you really need is this conceptual view of VSM where you've actually got the right infrastructure and tooling in place, not a bunch of PowerPoint and stickies. So I think one of the questions that I know, Chris, I think you've been getting this one, is value stream mapping enough? I emphatically feel no. It's a great way to get you started thinking. You actually need a VSM infrastructure and tool if you're going to make consequential decisions around this. But Chris, what have you been hearing?
Yeah, so a lot of people, what they realize is that they can map their value stream. It helps them understand where the silos are in their organization, but they realize it's a point in time, and that their value stream is going to change and morph as they take on new products or as they continue to transform. And so for them, the value stream map is sort of like the eye opener, almost like what this Learning to See title says. And then that's when they realize this is important. This is something that it's worth putting technology onto to make sure that we keep this up to date and that we continue to get information about this process. Yep.
Okay, Chris, I've already have DevOps, right? I've already, got I actually have continuous delivery. Why do I need a VSM?
Well, it's kind of funny. It's the people who had DevOps who are calling me and saying, hey, I need something more. I don't have data. I have these islands of automation. Each one of them has a lot of data, has, petabytes maybe of data, but like getting anything meaningful out of that isn't easy. And then like just getting meaning out of like, say, planning to CI/CD, but what about that to the next phase of delivery and then the next phase of delivery, and don't even talk to me about delivering value. So what VSM does is it sort of simplifies the approach of connecting all the components of your software delivery chain together, and gives you the visibility that most teams are lacking with just the DevOps tools alone.
Yeah, exactly. And I think most of the DevOps thought leaders or the people who deployed this successfully say exactly the same thing. They realize that it's a great and critical thing. But as you know, John Willis, one of the DevOps, one of the co-authors of the DevOps Handbook, said if you're only using the DORA metrics, this is on one of my recent podcasts, you're using the 1-inch end of a 12-inch ruler. It's a really important 1-inch end, but you need to measure. You need to use the whole ruler if you're going to measure value, not just assume that you're going to get that. So fundamentally,
Yep.
I think DevOps is critical, is important. Value stream management elevates that to end-to-end flow into the business. But if you've already got Agile deployed, Chris, why VSM?
Well, that's a great question. I've actually had people say, geez, isn't value stream management all about squeezing out variation and squeezing out, variance in the process? That's what it's used for in manufacturing. And I'm like, value stream management, I believe, I'm not, what I'm saying is that I feel like in those particular paradigms, it's used to actually squeeze out variation in the product itself. I want every engine to be exactly the same, have the same specs, have the same results. But in software delivery, it's more about making sure the same process is available and trying to make sure that everyone's following the same sort of rules, guidance, governance, and that you've automated all those rules and you have visibility into it. When you have all of that, and you've basically removed all the red tape from the software delivery pipeline, and you have visibility in the software delivery pipeline, it actually frees up the team to be more agile. Now they can spend the time that they were spending to drag out data from their tools and spend it on being innovative. They can understand where their process has gaps and figure out where else can I automate. It allows them to actually go faster. And when you can go faster, and you realize the cost to go faster is lower, you actually don't mind putting out smaller pieces of intellectual property. So it encourages the notion of minimally viable product because you're like, I can release this small piece of code. I can track it through my entire software delivery pipeline. I know that it goes faster than a big giant monolith. I can actually measure the output with a few customers. And then based on that, I can iterate very quickly and add more features onto that. That's real agile. So in many ways, value stream management unlocks all the potential that's bottled up in agile. Most teams that say they're doing agile are not. They're actually doing waterfall. They're taking a big giant project, they're chopping it up into 12 months, 12 nice even releases. They don't ever experiment. They never try things out. And at the end of that year, they do one release. That is not agile at all. That is waterfall. I don't care how you break it up. I don't care if you meet Scrum teams. I don't care if you have Jira or any other tool. I don't even care if you use a value stream management tool on it. That is not agile. Agile is doing things in small iterations. Value stream management allows you to speed up the process. It makes you feel more comfortable doing those small releases. It allows you to measure the value delivered, and it really does enable an agile delivery process.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's what agility was meant to be for many who brought it on, but it's not what it's
right.
Right? Which is why even Dean Leffingwell on the framework team, the SAFe framework team, they made this big point of saying, to have business agility, not just Scrum team agility, to have business agility, you need to manage your value streams. Exactly. So new discipline needs new tools, new roles, as you're about to see, and we see it as absolutely critical to digital transformation and as critical as value stream mapping was to manufacturing. So, all right, Chris.
Hey, yeah. So we look. We'll throw some data at you for a while. We've been giving you all the meaning behind value stream management, but where's the need, right? So, which of the following initiatives are likely to be your organization's top business priorities over the next 12 months? So this is from a survey we did in 2019. Grow revenue is always everyone's favorite thing to do, but right up there is improve the customer experience, improve products and services, improve our ability to innovate, increase influence and brand on each market. So, the idea that these folks really are focused on improving the experience of their customers and improving their ability to innovate, those are really critical components to what value stream management's all about. So next slide. And then, we also asked them, like, what are your firm's plans around adopting the following technology or operational initiatives? And value stream management analytics, even though it's a really new category, is right up there. Now, you might say that this could be a result of people using SAFe and value streams there. that's fine too. But 61% are planning to implement with the next, or implement, 61% are implementing or have implemented some form of value stream management, or value stream mapping is probably more like it. And then 20% are planning to do it over the next 12 months. A small percentage are not interested, but maybe it's because they just don't know how good value stream management really is.
But yeah, it is great to see it getting, and I've seen this as well anecdotally, Chris, is that
Yep.
it is high on people's agenda now, because they realize that to get value, it's interesting from the things above it, like DevOps and Agile, or the things below it, like SRE and microservices. You actually need it. You need that feedback loop to see if these things are helping you. Did the microservices help things go faster, or did we do it the wrong way?
Right. So the whole idea that you're trying to align business value to each role, and that's what this chart really is just trying to show, right? If you have value stream management, then you're thinking about, like a top level goal, like increase customer lifetime value. And then at Forrester, we talk a lot about OKRs. It's not everyone's favorite a way of aligning teams, but I like it a lot. I actually think used effectively, the notion of an objective and key result can be very powerful. And so in this particular example, like, so reduce customer churn from 25% to 10%, that allows each team to say, oh, I'm focused on customer churn and customer lifetime value. Well, if I'm a product team, maybe I'm going to deliver and think about focusing on a better design of my UI and improve the customer experience score. And if I'm a development leader, maybe I'm thinking about lowering page load time, or lowering the mean time to recovery, so that we can make sure that we're improving the service and improving these customers' experience with our product. And if enough operations, I suppose they're always thinking about higher availability and lower time to restore service as well, but it lets them think about, hey, we're really focused on the customer here. And so when you think about value stream management, it's really about whether or not all these teams are aligned, and are they actually delivering value to the customer.
Yeah, and I want to just double down on something Chris said. OKRs, I've been using them within Tasktop for a decade. I find them as a critical way of aligning business and delivery and getting people on the same page. There's other methodologies, of course, but I think the key thing is what value stream management gives you is a set of tooling and metrics for seeing how you're delivering in that fast feedback loop. That feedback loop needs to be connected to something on the business side. So if you're not using OKRs, I think the good thing is I know a lot of our biggest customers are adopting OKRs. So that's been great to see in the enterprise. You need something to attach them to. And oftentimes it'll actually be good to both transform the way that you measure value streams and how you measure much more incremental business value in these fast feedback loops, rather than these annual or quarterly waterfall cycles. So with that, I think the flow framework's been designed to make exactly that easy. So the flow framework is sort of the key contribution of project to product, and as you'll see in a moment, it's what we implement at Tasktop as a way of modeling and measuring your value streams and then connecting them to business results. And so the key thing is, as you'll see here, just as the flow framework connects up all flow metrics to business results, that measurable business results, that's exactly the approach that we've taken with the tooling. And it's kind of all goes back to that story that Chris told about his experiences at Microsoft. And that's the first time I've heard that story, Chris, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
The whole goal of the flow stream is to measure business value and to give you that fast feedback loop. If we did this bit of automation, if we added additional staffing or support or tooling here, did we actually reduce our flow time, which is the time to market, or did we not? Was there something else wrong? Was that not the actual bottleneck? And then to do that, that's a conversation and communication with the business. Because if the business does not understand the dynamics of value stream, such as the fact that technical debt slows down delivery, so the more work you pile on, the less you might get out. If you don't take down that technical debt, you get these dysfunctions in your value stream diagnostics, because there's an expectation that more should be done, but without taking down technical debt, you're actually getting less done. And of course, to overlay these flow metrics, these end-to-end metrics that both the business and the technology side focus on top of your Agile, your DevOps, your other telemetry. And then that allows you to do things like conquering the cost of delay, actually understanding why things are getting delayed, why it's taking you long to get things to market, and invest accordingly. So I won't go into too much detail, even though the slide is a lot of detail. But one of the key things that we've learned, that we've had a lot of success in having organizations adopt, is these flow metrics. Is these metrics that have just had a lot of thought, and some of some of my key colleagues in the industry within TaskTop as well really tear these things apart and understand that the 4 flow items really are the only things that you need to measure, right? Spent a lot of time with many thought leaders. Dean and I looked at every single work item in the SAFe taxonomy, which is I think one of the richest taxonomies in the industry for work items, and made sure that every flow item is actually every one of those work items can be represented. And so you end up with these 4 flow metrics, and the 4 flow metrics, and there's synonyms for some of these, but flow velocity, it's a measure of throughput, but it's an end-to-end measure of throughput. So it doesn't matter how fast your agile team is going if your customer's not getting that value, or if that feedback's not getting back to the business, to people who are to product management and to others. Flow efficiency, what's your ratio of active work states versus wait states, so you can find those bottlenecks. You can understand whether you have too few designers or a security review process is taking too long. Flow time, that's a time to market measure, but again, it's end to end. It's not the time in a single tool. It's not the time, the life cycle of a Jira issue or user story. It's actually your customers and the business perspective on time. And flow load, which is a way of measuring work in progress, that one of the main contributors that we've seen in customers' data to inefficiencies in the value stream. And of course, flow distribution, where our investments are going between features, defects, risks, and debts. So you can find a lot more of these on flowframework.org or on the TaskTop website. Just Google for flow framework and flow metrics. But Chris, why don't we switch to you, and then I'll give a few flow diagnostics after that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mik. That was great. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of change gears a little bit on is talk about what has been the impact to teams that think about or actually adopt value stream management. And one of them is that when they start focusing on outcomes, they start thinking about product-centric teams. They think about integrated teams. We interviewed a company that was in a pharmaceutical space. They talked about the fact that their cycles are so long and so disjoint that they really had no way of capturing the data that was anything meaningful. It was just sort of like these retrospectives inside of retrospectives. And they said with value stream management and the idea of connecting all their different aspects of their value chain together, they decided to break down a lot of those silos, created integrated product teams, and around that, surround it with services teams that support those product teams to get all their job done. So that's, we see really a lot of this evolution of sort of like the IT team, and then the development team, and then the product team, and and the X, Y, and Z team, the design team, whatever, all sort of like realizing that some of these places, it makes sense to have shared resources, and some of these places it makes sense to have an integrated product team that really owns the feature end to end. And what that really does is, as I said, it kind of connects these teams together horizontally, where you have the PM, whether it's the product management or the project management team, the dev, test, and IT, sort of connected together. And then you also have this vertical connection, right? Because the beauty of value stream management is that it not only connects individuals within the team and realizes where the silos are, it allows you to do a team of teams approach where you have data on one team, but now you can aggregate it with data from multiple teams. And so if you are a portfolio manager, if you're a vice president of engineering, you know how all your teams are functioning. If you're a CIO or a CTO, you can look at the whole organization and say, hey, in general, we're actually hitting our deadlines. We're transforming. We actually are delivering value to customers. If you're, other people that would be interested in this are portfolio managers, right? I've got not only a feature composed of multiple value streams, I manage a product that has multiple features. How do I roll all that up? And so value stream management, and with the power of data, allows you to look at these things on multiple axes across the organization and up and down the organizational chain. And that's another thing that value stream management does that is very difficult to do with just DevOps tools alone or just Agile alone. It's really hard to get visibility at these various levels and across these various teams that are typically in silos.
Yeah, Chris, I find it's such an effective visualization for people to really understand, right? Is that you've already got some great tooling, be it from Jira, Azure DevOps, or version 1, or Jenkins, or wherever, or Tricentis, or Gemba, for all those tools in the blue boxes here, right? And that tooling's getting better. What where TaskTop came from, is actually getting more and more data to each of those tools so that those people can make the right decisions. But what we saw as the huge gap in the market is that vertical and the horizontal and all the green bars, right? So we've actually focused our approach to value stream management purely on the green bars. So with this, pure VSM solution, the standalone solution that only focuses on that. But the key thing here is to also note the labels, right? Director, VP, CIO, CTO, all of those people need a view. If you've got your senior leadership, your executive leadership, and they're only looking at budgets and org charts, guess what? You're going to get some very suboptimal decisions made on your value streams, such as one customer that I talked to recently, they ended up letting go 100 of their manual testers in just one fell swoop. Of course, like a lot of organizations right now, they have to rebalance. But that may seem like a good decision based on some conference talk that someone may have seen that test automation used to happen. It actually ground their value stream to a halt, because you can't do it in that way. Just say, okay, we're no longer going to have that capability without proving out your automated testing capability and investing in it and seeing the results of the flow. So again, our key thing is to show this, and our approach to that has been through, first of all, our approach to this pure plain value stream management is it's visibility for leadership, but it's actionable for the teams. The teams are actually engaged in it. The teams are actively doing what Dominica de Grande has told everyone, which is making their work visible. If they make their tech debt work visible, they actually have a shot at getting more investment to tech debt, because they're demonstrated it increases flow, it increases the product experience, and allows them to deliver more with less. So the way that we approach that is, number one, with flow modeling. So we've realized that the tools are different, value streams are heterogeneous, and the teams work in different ways. Some of the SRA teams might have a more Kanban flow. Some of your dev teams might have a more Kanban flow. Others might be, very rigorous, safe. Others just might be using some kind of scrum of scrums that they created themselves. So those teams are responsible for modeling their work into a common value stream to make their work visible. To make that easy, we have the flow fabric. And so what the flow fabric is just a way of connecting to every one of those blue boxes, every tool that you're using today or tomorrow, as vendors continue innovating in the space and building great experiences. And then our approach to that has been to be very prescriptive about the metrics. There's hundreds of metrics you can come up with, but we're saying those 4 flow metrics and flow distribution are what's key to actually getting a view of value stream flow. And then when you've got a bottleneck, you drill the next layer down. So our approach to that is basically to layer this flow fabric, enable this flow modeling, and then the 2 products, TaskTop Viz allows you to see those value streams, and TaskTop Hubs allows you to automate the flows so that you can address some of those bottlenecks. So with this as the kind of backdrop, I'll show you a few flow diagnostics as we've done these Gemba walks for executives with this data. So I'll just really quickly run through a couple of these. So this is a healthcare company that wanted to increase velocity. And so these are the TaskTop Viz dashboards. They see that the teams are inundated with defect work. That's the red bars. And of course, everyone wants more velocity. They're implementing process changes and some of with the mindset that Chris has outlined here. But an interesting thing that's going on is that they're seeing that their flow efficiency is 100%. So it looks like everyone's working all the time. We look at that when we're doing the Gemba walk with their executives and their the development team heads and product owners, saying that this can't be right. They're not working all the time. We know they get stuck. They say they get stuck, right? There's still enough communication going on for that. And so by actually having the team add their wait states properly into their tool here, which in this case is Jira, the flow efficiency dropped instantly. So the team showed where they were blocked. So they made their work visible. And what happened is they realized that they were blocked on business analysis. What was actually going on is that this company, this organization, was going to downsize the BA organization and hire more developers, because that seems like a very modern thing to do, right? Everyone's doing it. What the data actually showed that if they did that, they would slow development down, because their bottleneck was in basically the requirements analysis and that whole part of the feedback loop. So they did the opposite thing of what they planned. They actually hired a BA and kept hiring BAs out of cycle to reduce that bottleneck. And this is what the data shows you. This is what actually having data on a value stream will allow you to see, is not have these opinions that we should get rid of BAs and hire more developers, but actually use the data to drive decisions to get more value to customers faster. And oftentimes, it's interesting, it'll actually be against intuitions that you might have had, as in this case. So similar example, champion, we've been actually seeing the effects of COVID in many customers, right? Is how they're looking at the shift to work from home and where that's causing bottlenecks as people have to collaborate differently and so on. So making all of this visible, be it technical debt, be it the shift in working styles, All of this actually will give you real-time data and a fast feedback loop on how to make decisions. This is a quick story on technical debt from a financial services organization. Usual story, the business is dumping tons on the teams, flow load, so work in progress is way too high. If you look at the ratio of the dark green to the light green, which is the backlog sizes, there's no way this set of teams, this value stream will ever catch up, right? But if we actually use the analytics of TaskTop over here, and we see where work is getting stuck, it's on these core backend services because they've not made the API investments that they've been talking about, splitting out into microservices for 2 years. So everyone knows what to do in this case, they just haven't done it. And by showing how much work is queuing up on core backend services over here through these analytics, they've now actually been able to fund the Slay the Monolith initiative properly for once, and actually invest there, reduce the technical debt in this key part of their platform, put more full-time developers on it, and make everything go faster on the side of the business. So these are just some of the diagnostics that you see on your value streams. And again, it's key that both the business perspective and the technology perspective are on the same page on this. So Chris, why don't you wrap us up here?
Yeah, sure. So this is a comment from one of our customers, customer interviews actually, that we did for the Wave. And this is really kind of interesting, right? The whole idea that VSM connects software development with product mindset, right? So this particular person was from an insurance company, and the quote was basically saying, in the past, we looked at our insurance products as something that would be managed by an actuary. That person understood the risk and the costs and so forth. But when we started using value stream management, we realized our value was actually tied to our software delivery as well. It was actually tied to the software products we were delivering that actually presented those insurance instruments to our customers. And furthermore, what we realized is that those are as critical to our product as any other product that we have. And they took on a product mindset for all the work that they do. And because of that product mindset, they now realize what it means to deliver value from a digital experience perspective and what it means to deliver value from the insurance instrument perspective. And so I thought that was really quite powerful, that a company that is so traditional and so sort of steeped in their traditions felt that this was a really a catalyst to how they changed.
Yeah, music to my ears as well.
And so we at Forrester see the value stream management, as I said earlier, really empowering teams to focus on products. It empowers them to be more agile. It empowers them to get more work done with less red tape and with visibility, transparency, metrics that you can be actionable on, and understand what's the right direction we should be going in. I just feel like there's a lot of goodness that could come out of knowing the direction you want to go in and where you want to focus.
All right, I think with that, we've been thrilled to be named the leader in this category. I think we're pretty much at our recorded time, or allocated time, I should say, for people who want to.
We were so passionate, we didn't have time to actually do all the slides.
We did not, but we came close. But we would, again, you can follow up with TaskTop if you're interested in learning anything more on the flow metrics or with on TaskTop Viz, and I think right now we can still take a few questions for anyone who wants to stick around. So
sure, I'll hang out.
All right, we'll do a couple quick questions. So we have one question: do you not differentiate operation, such as profit creation, versus development, product or service production value streams?
So I've actually seen some interesting things going on in our research where people actually can take a really end-to-end view of the value stream that says it goes all the way from idea out to the operation to measuring the value. Other companies say, you know what, I have a value stream that's just an idea to the idea getting into the backlog. That's their value stream. It's very complicated. It has to go through a bunch of approval processes, and they're starting out with just like, I just want to get that piece done. The development people have their own value stream. And so the way I look at it is someone says, I want to make a sausage, but I don't care how it gets made. I just want to know when it gets into the backlog. And then at the end of the day, how that actually gets sold and marketed and whatnot. So I look at this from a perspective is depending on the culture of the business and how they want to manage their business or how sophisticated and complicated it actually is, they might have multiple value streams within the overall value stream. And so you can certainly break it down that way, or you can combine them.
And so, yeah, I completely agree with that. And then the interesting thing is, just to give an example of Tasktop or some of the very large companies that I've studied, the answer is no. You start by not distinguishing them. So, and of course, so I'll give you an example of what we do. So for our various products, we primarily look at the cost, the value, the employee engagement of the value stream, which is this team of teams construct, right? So one value stream could have really different AWS hosting costs than another, right? It might be much more computer data incentive than another. And so we're looking at really the life cycle cost of that whole value stream. And that's primarily how we look and review things and how much value it's delivering, what the customer net promoter scores are, and so on. And then secondarily, the answer is yes. So we actually do distinguish, right? We want to understand what all of the operations costs are, what all the development costs are, how happy are all the, are the engineers versus the support staff. But to me, the really big switch in terms of managing in an operating model is to make the value stream metrics, the value stream revenue, the value stream cost, the value stream happiness, the primary thing that we manage to, the primary thing that we show to our board, the primary thing that tech giants actually look at evaluating product lines with, their value streams with, and then those other slices be secondary. And I think that's a really
I actually agree with that, because at the end of the day, if you do slice and dice it up, all you're really setting yourself up for is more silos.
Yep. Yeah, and so value stream management, exactly. At a business level, it breaks through those silos.
All right, we'll do one more question before wrapping up. And that is there a dependency between the size of the enterprise and the amount of value stream?
I don't think so, but I'm going to let Mik take this one.
Yeah, so we've had enough, we have a lot of data now in terms of, seeing different shapes and sizes of value streams. And I'd say there's definitely, primarily there's inconsistency. So it's interesting in how an organization slices and dices its value streams. And then there's a lot of questions of, how should we actually do it? Like, we have 1,300 applications. How many value streams do we have? And I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. And I think a more effective way of looking at it is to start customer first, start business first. So look at what capabilities are you delivering? Are you marketing? Are you monetizing? Are the SKUs that you're really tracking from a financial perspective? And then you map let's say the application portfolio and the teams into that. And that's really starts you working on your value streams. Of course, you can start small, just start with a subset of it. But there's just so much legacy infrastructure in your tools, in your agile, the shape of your agile repository or your team structures, and your application portfolio that have to do with building IT as a set of cost center capabilities. But I think it's really, really good to, again, get everyone in the same room, both from the business and technology, and say, hey, what capabilities do we really care about? Let's map our application portfolio and our agile teams into that. Those are value streams. Let's measure one or two of them. And then let's change it over time, because we realize, okay, we really got that wrong. Or, okay, this capability should really be the set of APIs that's a first-class internal platform product that supports 4 different business value streams, and we've completely understaffed. So yeah, I think, just keep in mind these value streams are about customer value. That's what products are about. And so always start with the end.
That's a great point, Mik. You actually inspired me to think about another analyst, Margot Visitation, who writes a lot about portfolio and agile portfolio management. And she always talks about the fact that, I don't care if you have a whole portfolio of 1,300 applications or any of them delivering value. And if you don't have a metric or a KPI that tells you that I expect the following from these capabilities, then all you're just doing is make work. You have a bunch of software for the sake of having software. What you really want to do is have this notion of tying the customer back up through the portfolio to understand what are all the capabilities they're providing. Do I have an overlap in any of these cases? Which ones are delivering value? Which ones aren't? And apply this technology and methodology onto it so that you can figure out where there's opportunities to maybe consolidate, like Mik was saying. Like, we have an API. Why isn't this API used on these other platforms? It does. They all have duplicate capabilities and whatnot. And so instead of looking at the portfolio and going towards the customer, come back from the customer, look at your portfolio and figure out what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and how we know when we're actually succeeding in our marketplace.
It's perfect mic drop to end it on, I think. So.
Thank you very much, Mik. This was great.